welcome to everybody who is joining us from our live audience out there at Facebook and YouTube. We have the utmost pleasure for welcoming the Fujinon team today, where they're going to be really showcasing a lot of their newest lenses, giving us a brief history about the company, and really just describing and having a conversation about one of the things that I think that they do a great job of, which is gleaning information from the community, whether it be DPs, production companies, rental companies, listening to what their needs are, and listening to what ultimately the next product should be to get produced. And so we'll be talking a little bit about that today. I'm Austin Rios. I've been a part of Dynamic basically since its inception with Brandon. You have the entire Dynamic team here. For those of you who are joining on Fujinon's channels, you might not have heard of us, but Dynamic Rentals is a rental company that just does sub-rentals. So we support the larger industry as a way of sub-rentals by being essentially a backup to their inventory, providing the latest and greatest equipment. I'll just kind of go around and introduce our team first, so everybody has a quick understanding. Brandon Zachary is our CEO, and covers mainly the operations and business side of Dynamic. Tom Smith is in our UK office. He basically is the head of sales here for Dynamic, and leads the charge in educating a lot of our clients on what those new products are, and structured deals as well. Sean Sims, our chief technology officer, also sits in Europe, and is in charge of basically our entire QC process, making sure when we receive a lens that it's in tip-top shape and we're getting it to you in its best quality. And then we're joined by Coda Aranda, one of our junior techs out of Atlanta, and our marketing director, Anna Schmidt, who sits in Burbank. We're very, very lucky to have the Fujinon team, and this is largely going to be in two parts: a presentation that will be led by Tom, and then followed by sort of a conversational Q&A, lots of questions that we have for this team on the Dynamic side. And then we're going to keep our eyes peeled for the questions that are coming in out of the live audiences on YouTube and Facebook Live. So Fujinon, many of you know, but some people do forget, what is a film or was a film company for 85 years. They used to create motion picture film, have since transcended into creating lenses and creating lots of different great equipment for this industry and for filmmakers to be able to produce the look and the feel that they're trying to get. Tom Fletcher, he ran a rental company. I'm sure many people know he's an industry vet, that you basically can't escape a different PERG meeting or a rental company meeting without Tom's name being brought up. And so we're very lucky to have him. Chuck is also joining us. He's been with the company for 30 years. Both him and Tom have been are associate members of the ASC. Mark, if you want to give a little wave, Mark, so people know where you are. Mark spearheads all the efforts for the cinema in Europe, and he's always at the BSC shows and Camera Homage, so you've probably seen him or spoke to him there. Stosh, hi Stosh, how are you? Stosh is in Toronto. He's on the board of the Cynthia chapter, and we're also excited for his experience and commentary today. And then Miles is in Los Angeles. He's also a Fujinon vet. He's been with the company for 30 years and started in the service side, and really leads that technical effort for Fujinon as well. So we're very, very excited to have this team on, and without further ado, Tom, I'll let you take it from here.
Wonderful. Thank you guys for for arranging this, and thanks for all my colleagues around the world joining us. So we will start the presentation here. Everybody can see my screen. Hold on. I want to
You got audio live?
That's exactly what I was going to change. Hold on. There we go. Okay, everybody sees my screen, correct?
Check.
Okay, perfect. We are here to talk about Premista. And what I do want to go through is a little bit of background on Fujinon, as Austin kind of hinted at. We did start as Fujifilm. We've been making film products for 85 years. For the last 20 years, we've been also making cinema lenses, starting with our 2/3 inch cinema lenses, the C series, E series, and even primes. Then we went on to build our Premiers, our Cabrios, built lenses for other people, our little MKs. And along the way, we amassed a really good collection of credits and cinematographers that are enjoying and trust the Fujinon lens to deliver that cinematic image. And you can see a couple of titles on there, seeing Avatar. Mauro Fiore won the Academy Award using our 2/3 inch lenses for Avatar. Lena Sangren used our Cabrios for First Man, and Paul Cameron's used them for Westworld. You see a lot of other credits on there. But what we're really here to talk about is what's going on with Premista. And we introduced these lenses last year at NAB, and then we shipped them later in the summer. And then later in the discussion, we want to talk about future large format lenses. And that to us is really important, is to get feedback, as Austin kind of mentioned. That is how we make sure we're building the right products for what you guys want. So those questions are really helpful to us. To review Premista, we have two lenses currently, a 28-100 T29 and an 80-250 T29. It does ramp a little bit from 200 to 250, slightly less than a stop. We have a 46.3 image circle, a 114 front. Both lenses are the same size and weights. The gears are in the same spot. That's real important to people. And we like to say these lenses are 28% shorter and 46% lighter when we compare it against our 18-85 Premier lens, which is our top of the line lens in the Super 35 world, the most popular lens. These lenses, the Premistas, have no breathing, a very pleasant bokeh. Flange focus adjustment, we'll come back to that a little bit later. The durable construction, we'll touch about that a little bit later as well. That's important to any rental house, is having a lens that's working and earning money for you. We've heard from rental houses and cinematographers that the lenses cut well with the Supremes and the Signatures, and these lenses are not a vintage lens. This is a classic Fujinon clean look. A lot of cinematographers have told us that these lenses do have a little bit of cinematic character, a little bit more than our Premiers, but you're going to see a good clean image that Fujinon is known for. When we look at the image circle, it's a 46.3 image circle. And I also want to bring up the illumination circle, and that's a bigger area that is covering more than the image circle. And what the image circle is to us and lens manufacturers is, what is the resolution that's staying consistent? Where do you guarantee that you have the high-end optical performance from edge to edge? And when does it start to fall off? And for us, it starts to fall off at 46.3. However, the lens will still perform and provide up to 48.5. And you can see some of the different cameras that we're covering. We're covering all the major large format cameras that are on the market: the Arri, the Sony, the Canon, the Red Monstro. We also want to bring up our sister company, our still division, the GFX. It covers it in the video mode. And then the Alexa 65, it covers it in 5K mode. Mauro Fiore actually shot a feature this past summer using the Premistas. And there's all the lenses. And I also want to remind you that it covers Super 35 cameras as well. It's not just a lens that has to be used solely on large format cameras. These are some of our partners around the country, and I hope a lot of you are on the call here today or listening and watching this Facebook Live. And you can see the adoption of our lenses is really widespread throughout North America. And then my colleague in Europe, you can see, look at what a great job Mark has done getting the United Kingdom up on Premista. The lens is very popular over in the UK, and you can see the rest of Europe. And this is the idea behind those maps was to encourage cinematographers to want to test the lenses, and we want to encourage them to go there and test our lenses. In the short 7 months that the lenses have been out, these are some of the credits that we've amassed. And you can see here, just to talk about this one quickly, in the upper left-hand corner, pink was a multi-camera concert with 25 large format cameras where they used our lenses for that, or some of our lenses on some of the cameras. You see other television shows, and you see some features. Thomas Fletcher, he just used the Premista for some quick reshoots or for just a few days, because most of the principal photography on Spencer Confidential and Ma Rainey happened before the lenses were out. And then you can see some other features, and Claudio's kind of in the same boat as Tobias. The vast majority of Top Gun was shot before the Premista came out. But I will mention that the Fujinon 20 to 120 and the 25 to 300 were used extensively on Top Gun for the aerial work. And this is the same list where we see a lot of different cinematographers and studios that have used our lenses. And we're thrilled to see new names that haven't been people that have used Fujinon lenses in the past. As I've mentioned, Claudio and Tobias and John Toll have used our lenses, and Paul Cameron have used our lenses in the past. But seeing new names like Bob Richardson and Kramer and Dana Gonzalez, that makes us excited. And but we want to emphasize that these lenses are not just for major feature films and big budget television shows. You can use these lenses as AJ did on a corporate piece. He's doing a piece for Real D about their new technology. And Bill Bennett used our lenses for a Kawasaki commercial. You can see some of that footage playing, hopefully smoothly on your computer remotely. Putting it on the end of a Russian arm. And staying in that kind of that vein, Jeff McCoy is an owner operator in the San Francisco area. And this is a Mustang commercial that he did, the running footage package for the Mustang electric car that's out, and the ads are running on television now. And he does a lot of car commercials, as you can see. This is the Mercedes spot. And we're thrilled to see the lens on a gimbal going inside of a car. That just means we've made the right choice as far as making the size and weight of the lens. And you can see a Toyota commercial and a Freightliner spot. Fujinon has always been strong in the helicopter market. That's continuing now with the Premista. Pat Longman out of Miami is using it. And then in the UK, Jeremy, you saw a lot of his credits on the previous page. He uses the shot over system, and this is him installing it there. If we would have been at NAB, we would have had a big giant testimonial poster from Pat Longman. And he basically says in here that we made all the right choices when we were designing this lens. And lens design is about choices. It's about what T-stop do you want to make? What focal range do you want to have? What weight do you want it to be? All those things. And we'll talk about that more. We're talking about future lenses. And Jeremy is featured in our British Cinematographer magazine by our colleagues in Europe. Mark, who's on this call, he has a testimonial running over there. And the other thing, again, that our factory is really thrilled about is that both of these lenses are able to go onto a drone that flies. And that's just great for us to see. You know, we wanted to build something small and light. Dave Delaria, as you can see here, is doing a CBS Sunday morning piece. using our lens with an FX9. He shot an interview for Random House, as you can see here. And what he really commented on was how much separation he's getting from the talent, from the background, and the ability to work at the speed that news crews need to work at, of not having to change lenses and go to primes, but still having the image quality of a prime. And then last but not least, we'll throw the documentary world. Paolo Sodi took our lens and a Venice camera and went to Mount Kilimanjaro and the Serengeti in Kenya. And this is kind of the equivalent of 20 years ago, 25 years ago, somebody shooting a documentary on 35 millimeter film as opposed to 16. I don't think large format lenses are going to be used all that often on documentaries, but when you really want the quality, you really want dynamic looking pictures, this was the choice that he made to do this project. And I've mentioned Tobias a couple times in this, and we did our launch film that we showed at Cinegear last year. We had one lens, and Chuck and I went out with Tobias and his daughter, Aisha. She wrote a great script challenging our lens, and obviously has a great relationship with her father to be able to put our lenses through the paces and kind of challenge it. And I'm going to show you just a 50 seconds of the behind the scenes making of Rhinestone Blue. I suggest that you go to our YouTube channels and see the full making of, as well as the short film. It's quite a good film.
For Rhinestone Blue, we used the large format Premista zoom lens.
We shot the whole film on that lens, which was really an exciting challenge.
Margaret!
I felt for the first time like, wow, I have a lens that has the same quality as a prime lens in terms of the contrast, sharpness, and I was very impressed by the lack of focus breathing and the depth of field.
The Premista 28-100 I think is fantastic. Great for dollies, pursuit vehicles, great for cranes, big range of what you need.
This 28-100 Premista is a very good all-around piece of glass. I wouldn't hesitate to go out with that and a few primes and call it a lens package. Gotta love it.
The biggest surprise to me is really how cinematic the lens looks.
Yeah, let's do the unexpected. The full frame 28-100 lens made it happen, and it just made it that much more fun that it was my dad.
I felt very safe with those lenses. This will be my to-go lens now. I was blown away by how similar it is to the Fujinon Premiere, what I'm used to seeing on the big screen.
That's cut.
So Stosh, why don't you take it from here and go through some of the technical side of the Premistas?
For sure, Tom. Thank you very much. So from here, what we want to do is talk a little bit about the background and the philosophy that Fujinon uses when developing and designing our lenses. With that said, when we looked to make some choices for the Premista, one of the first ones was the image circle. And how big is that image circle going to be? We made a decision to go with a 46.3 mil image circle. And as you saw from Tom, that gave us a couple of focal lengths in the 28-100 and the 80-250. One of the more common questions we get is, how does that relate to Super 35? I think in angles of view that I get out of my Super 35 lens. Well, what we want to share with you with this chart is just some awareness that the reality is that as we've moved into these full format, our large format cameras, there really aren't standards in terms of the image circle size and the size of the active sensor. So what we want to share with you here is, we tend to use a 1.5 times multiplier for a ballpark. But if your DP really needs to know exactly what that relative angle of view will be, it's important to know which camera they're using and in which format. So here it gives you a few examples, the red DXL, the red Monstro 8K or the Panavision DXL. At 28 mil, the relative angle of view you would have had in Super 35 would be 16.4. If we look at the Alexa LF, again, it would be 18.3. The Sony Venice, 18.7. Or even if we were to put it on the Fuji GFX with that using the full image circle and then some, the full illumination circle, we'd be at the 15.3. if we look at those same numbers on the tele end, you'll see again that those relative angles of view. So it's important to remember that that number is based on the active sensor of the large format and then the math that flows down from there. The next most popular question is, what would be the relative depth of field? So when we look at the 28 to 100 at T2.9, again, what is that relative depth of field in Super 35? You'd need to shoot with a lens that's T17 to capture that same depth of field as the 2.9 of the Premista. And then again, flowing through the rest of the chart. So again, just a reminder that some math is required to give the DPs the specific numbers should they need them. Next up, we want to talk a little bit more about that clean, sharp look, that Fujinon traditional look that Tom referenced. It is stunning optical performance. It's clean, it's sharp, there are very minimal aberrations. And Fuji takes color science very seriously from its long history of producing film and all these lenses. It's real important in our coatings development that we provide as natural and neutral a color temperature across all the lenses and as consistent as possible. One of the things that we really spend a lot of time managing is unwanted flares and goes. All lenses, you can make them all flare, but having the ability to control those flares and to manage the unwanted flares is real critical and can really impact your images, especially as we start to move into higher dynamic range capture and HDR capture. So specific to color balance, what we're seeing here is the color chart, of course. This purple curve is one of our competitive lenses, and then layered on top of that, you'll see now the Fujinon Premista color coating characteristics. And here you're seeing we're working towards bringing that up as much as possible and flattening the top of that. That's giving us that natural neutral color balance. Not only for the Premista, but it's important to Fuji that all of our cinema lenses match from a colors perspective. So we're not putting individual model numbers, but this cluster of green on the CCI chart, those are all the different Fujinon lenses from the HK series, so the Premier, Cine Zooms, the Cabrio series, the lightweight E-mount MKs, as well as the Premistas. So you'll see, regardless of what Fujinon lenses you deploy, your color temperature is going to be very close. As a comparison, we like at the factory to test some competing lenses. These yellow dots are all different focal lengths within one set of high-end primes that are available on the market today, current prime. So you'll see, and then the blue dots are another competing set of lenses. So, you know, that's just something we want to point out. If it's important for you for your lenses to match in terms of color, that's something that Fuji spends a lot of time and effort working towards. Flare, as I mentioned earlier, having control over that flare and managing unwanted flare. This is just a real simple backlit picture of a draped chair. And you'll see when we shoot, actually with older generation lenses, you're gonna get that milky black. So your overall black levels are being raised up in your image, and that's really compressing your ability to have dynamic range and that latitude. All those stops of capture are filtered out right at the front of the lens if there's that much flare in your image. So there's really two things that control the flare in the modern lens, two new things. The first is the internal barrel design. So you'll see along the inside surface of the lens, you'll get lots of light that tends to bounce around and uncontrollably hit the sensor at unplanned angles and create that veiling flare, that kind of white mushy look. What you're seeing here is what the modern lens looks like, and there's lots of baffling and barrel design internally that will stop that stray light from bouncing and deaden it internally and avoid it from hitting the sensor. The other thing that's very important is the coating. So here we see some elements coming out of the coating. I want to say tent, but coating room we'll call it. And those coatings, you know, we're currently in who knows generation what, but really it's all about having that anti-reflective. And this is where we manage that reflecting light back and forth as it passes through all the various pieces of glass in the lens. So the result of this modern design is really nice deep blacks where we can maximize that latitude for the camera from the lens and not be a restricting factor. Another example of that flare. So if we look at these three images, and what we like to point out in the top one on the left is this tends to be a noisy image. You know, there's that, again, that whole veiling flare, lots of washout of the image. The second one down, we've got lots of flare from the bottom right and bouncing around in the image. It really isn't controlled. What we like to produce is an image where we've got great contrast in the subject. We've got details in the blacks of her dress, and we still have that nice creative flare coming down from the corner. So you can still introduce these natural flares resulting from the lens, and then you can also maintain that high contrast, that great range, so that your images aren't compromised in any way. Aspheric lenses, certainly that is something we do deploy. There are multiple aspheric lenses in the Premista, and that really provides us some efficiencies in terms of size and weight. One of the challenges with aspherics traditionally is in the grinding process, it can be very difficult because they're not simple convex or concave lenses. So you tend to get these ringing, these onion rings in your bokehs if you're not able to grind them with the precision that we need to provide, as we see on the right, these nice clean bokehs that you get from the Premista. So that's important to us. Also in the Premistas, we have a new 13 blade iris. So you'll see from those two lower images, we get much rounder, nice, natural looking out of focus bokehs. What we're showing here is just, you know, the zoom lenses, there's lots of glass. These tend to be much more complex than your average prime lens. But what we take great pride in at Fuji is we hear time and time again from DPs and the users of the lenses that optically there really isn't a compromise when using a Fujinon zoom lens as opposed to their favorite primes. So when we—
Can I jump in on that, Stosh?
Yeah, sure.
The compromise that we certainly understand is the stop. We're going to be a 2.9. A prime lens is going to give you a faster stop than what we do. There's no question about that. And a shorter length, the overall length of the lens is going to be shorter than what ours is. And then they also can have some better close focus. But aside from those 3 points, if you're shooting at a 2.9, you know, a prime lens is a great choice. And a lot of television shows have moved for speed of efficiency to using, you know, a zoom lens, and optically they don't see it as a compromise.
Right on, Tom. So yeah, obviously we're very aware of the t-stop and size and weight, but from an optical and MTF, your contrast, your sharpness, your dynamic range, certainly those aren't places where there is a compromise. And it'll be interesting to see as we come out of some of the current situation, if taking advantage of these kinds of high quality zooms will become even more popular, so that, you know, you really don't have to touch the camera as often as you did previously. You can still maintain that pristine picture quality, but now wirelessly through your Fizz unit, you can change your focal length without stopping to change the lens, keep that pace of production up, get through as many setups a day as we can, and touch things as little as possible. Next up is the flange focus adjustment. Again, Tom talked about that. This is something that Fuji takes great pride in. It's our back focus adjustment for calibrating the lens. It is an updated mechanical design. There's no need to take apart your lens. Your lens techs can set these lenses to the cameras before they go out very quickly and efficiently. This isn't something new for us. We've had this in all our cine lenses. You can see here in some of the early 2/3 inch. We had a big locking knob on there, those early primes, the same kind of design. Again, in holding true with our desire to listen to the market, here you'll see there's a scale on the side of the lens, like our video lenses. move into that very popular Cabrio 1990. The scale disappeared, but there's still the locking ring. As we came to market with the HK Premieres, those really being our first PL mount, our first Super 35 mil cinema specific lens. This was the original design where you see that scales there, and there's actually a Phillips screw locking screw. We brought this to NAB, and some of the early feedback from some of the highest end rental houses, maybe some of you on the call now, was that we can't have that. That's just not going to work. We're not going to buy that. So factory quickly responded and deployed the lenses with a hidden back focus. So you need this special tool. It's hidden at the bottom. We've taken off the scale. So once your lens tech in the shop sets this, they can send out their package or send it to the prep bay, send it out onto the show, and they can forget it. It's just like they shimmed it. It's hidden, it's easy, and it's quick to set up, and it gives them the ultimate reliability once they're out there. Here we see that the Premista, what we changed on this one is instead of being hidden underneath was a special screw. It's just on the side with a standard 2mm Allen key, make it a little bit easier for that lens tech to access it when they're setting it up in the shop. Next up is lens data. So these lenses do have encoders built in. This isn't something new from Fuji. You'll see here this image was from, I believe, the early days of Star Wars. It was a little bit more complicated back then with some external motors. And I believe that was a partnership with Evertz, this external box that enabled all that lens positional data and I believe all the head and directional stuff as well to get sent back down and laid down onto the HD cam tape in the Sony camera there. Now it's a little more simplified. It's all built into the lens, the encoders. This is built on the /I, the Cook /I protocol, and that hot shoe is there on the lens and will mate with the camera and give you all that positional data. But what we've done is we're now complying to the Zeiss extended data, which now adds a layer to this. So now we will take, in addition to the positional, all the shading and distortion characteristics of the lens and provide them real time, frame accurately to the camera, so they can be recorded with the Essence data and save you a lot of time and efficiencies. So really this negates your need to shoot your grids with your lenses at all the different positions, and it will give you much better accuracy because we have that data throughout the whole range. So here we're going to just play a quick video. This is the output of the data. So you can see on the left is the distortion curve. Fujinon lenses are typically very low distortion. You'll see that doesn't move very much at all. On the right, you'll see the shading curve. So as it runs through the edge, and this is just a frame grab, the video of us taking the output of the extended data here in this setup at BSC Expo actually, and running the lens from end to end. And you can see how that dynamically changes and moves throughout. We're real excited to be an extended data partner in this. And we're real excited to see, to hear more about shows that are looking to deploy this. Camera manufacturers will be launching firmwares that will enable this to record directly through the /I port and not need external cables from the 4-pin LEMO. Most recently, Sony did announce in their version 6 soft firmware that's coming in November, this feature will be enabled in the Venice. So we expect other cameras to be making announcements real soon, camera vendors. We would have had some additional content and instructional videos around this with the support of Gary Adcock for NAB, but obviously there's been some delays in that. That is still something we're working towards and we'll be able to share with everyone once it becomes available. LPL is another common question we get. What is our solution for LPL? Well, in the design, there's our good friend, Mr. Kasai from Germany, holding a Fujinon Premista with an LPL mount fitted on it. The reason why we need to do this, we feel it's important to have a solution in LPL, is to negate potential mistakes or damage from occurring by confusion of having both the camera mount and the adapter mount ears on there. After a long day on set, an assistant changes the lens and accidentally takes the wrong one off and then puts an LPL prime attempts to put one on, there's an opportunity for confusion and damage. So our solution is take that ARRI LPL adapter, remove the ears, with this torque wrench, lock it down, and now this essentially makes that PL mount, PL mount Premista an LPL mount Premista. So we're not going to try to over-engineer something. Their solution is clean and easy, and feedback's been positive around that to date. They do have the nice luminous numbering on there. They come in both imperial and metric focus scales, and they really do have that Fujinon durability that most people have come to love. As Tom said, they don't spend much time in the shop, which means they're available to be out in the field making money. One note we just wanted to bring up, if any of your lenses are in need of service, all of our service shops are open at this time. So please don't be shy. We're certainly on reduced workforces and working within the new rules and realities, but all those North American service centers are open and available to support any of the needs you may have at this downtime.
And can I also mention the same goes for London as well? So any London rental houses have the same opportunity to get service done here.
Wonderful. And Canada. I said North American, I guess. So with that, we just like this slide. This is a great slide that just gives us a sense of what the coverage of these two zoom lenses are relative to some of the current sets of full frame primes that are out there today. So the 28 to 100 covers that first set, and then the 80 to 250 this back end, which really gives us a nice chunk of the usable focal lengths and the most commonly used focal lengths that shows will deploy with in two zoom lenses in large format from Fuji. So there they are. So with that, I believe that that ends the formal presentation part. And here's where we want to get a little more interactive.
This is where we get to the fun part.
The fun part. So you've paid your dues, and we really look forward to your feedback here. So here's our current lineup. We've got the two Premistas, 28 to 100, 80 to 250, both T2.9, a slight ramp on the 80 to 250, nice, small, lightweight. So what are our choices now? Do we look toward something short, smaller, lightweight, and wide, a real long lens, a big zoom ratio, or something more affordable in a short flange option? So when making choices, design choices, we have to consider things like size, weight, the T-stop, the focal range, the front element diameter. That has a lot to do with how fast we can be. Which mounts do we want to deploy? Do we need to have encoders on future units? Is it important to provide a servo drive? What image circle? Are we good at the 46.3? Should we consider different focus barrel rotations? What price points, and is autofocus something we should consider if we start to look to some of the new camera offerings out there? So with that, we'd be curious to hear some feedback. Maybe the team at Dynamic could get the ball rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, Tom, thank you so much for the presentation, and Stosh for the technical detail overview. The thing that I think really shows extremely well with Fujinon is your consistency in lenses, the consistency in look, which kind of gives the filmmaker, the DP, the creative control that they need. And so I think that's why we're here, and I really appreciate you guys going over that. I'd say in terms of what would be next, Tom, you kind of touched on something that a little earlier in terms of full frame and Super 35, right? That the 28 to 100 is not just a full frame lens; it is a cinema lens that can be used in a Super 35, image sensor camera, or a full frame as well. So, because of that, I really feel like Fujinon could do with a lightweight wide option. you know, a short, lightweight, wide option that would fit right in with the 20-100 and the 80-250. I feel like that's the gap right there to a certain extent, because, you know, 28 and full frame, as you showed, Stosh, is very wide, right? That's, I believe, between 16 and 18 millimeter, depending on that. But, you know, at the same time, you know, that 28-100 is very likely to be used in Super 35 cameras as well, in the current time that we're in. So because of that, you know, that would just be my thought and recommendation, to have something that overlaps that.
You'd like us to fill in this gap in here is what you'd like to see next.
Correct. I think that would be more the most logical next step, especially that would complement the lenses that you guys have already released.
Yeah, we've heard that quite frequently. That's been probably one of the biggest choices that we've heard. Sean, do you agree with that choice?
Yeah, I would obviously something on the lighter side as well, so we can kind of move to more of a handheld gimbal sort of lens that we can just kind of be more nimble with.
Okay, good.
Are you guys hearing what's your opinion on the extended data or the encoders being built in? Is that something that you're seeing become asked for a little bit more as your clients reach out to you for the lenses?
On our side, you know, I have to say no, but okay. that's only in this current moment, right? Mm-hmm. Because when Sony, you know, releases their next firmware update, when, you know, it's like this is kind of the calm before the storm with that, if you will, right? So you guys are future-proofing your lenses to be able to have that capability. And while a lot of that is actually, that eye data is accessible now, a lot of it is future-proofing as people become more aware of how to use that data, how DPs and DITs really use that data, you know, to evaluate their image.
I think there's quite a large education to be done still, which is, as Stosh mentioned before, that we were planning to release some things, but just things about the fact that the extended data isn't just about saving time either. It's actually more accurate because it's mathematically derived data based on every single focal length, every single focus position, every single t-stop. Whereas obviously when you actually do your grid mapping, there is an element of interpolation where you can't fit every single bit. So, and also there's, you know, the possibility of the camera not being exactly square on or exactly at the same distance that you thought it was. So with all the potentials for errors in grid testing, obviously, you know, once it's here and people are testing it and using it, I think hopefully people will see there's a lot more benefit than just saving time.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely an educational aspect that goes along with that for sure. You know, we do have other questions from our team, if that's okay, Tom.
Yeah.
Mine. But, you know, I do want to welcome the audience members to live stream your questions. Any comment or question or feedback you guys have as you're watching, feel free to make a comment, and we can ask the Fujifilm team here. Tom, did you have a question?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. So Tom, what's your opinion on the future of Super 35?
I think Super 35 is going to be here for very long, forever. Just like, to me, I equate large format as like 35 millimeter film was to 16 millimeter film. There was a bigger sensor. Not everybody chose to shoot Super 35 or 35 millimeter film. People still shot on 16 millimeter. So for budget, size, portability, to have the longer zoom ranges in a zoom lens, the Super 35 camera is a great choice. And we're hearing there's future cameras coming out with higher resolutions that are going to be Super 35, 4K and higher. That excites us.
Sure, I think it's this COVID pandemic was a terrible time for the industry. I mean, full stop. But we were kind of in this transition between, are we going, more towards the full frame? Is that going to take over from Super 35? And I think it's left people more than ever nervous about investing in that full frame, glass and camera. So, it's I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out and how quickly that new Arri camera comes out, because I think that's what a lot of people are hoping for quickly.
Yeah, that's gonna, any rental house, the investment that you have in 35 millimeter glass is still gonna keep working for years and years and years. I do think you're gonna see the large, big budget television shows that can afford to go to large format. They're gonna continue to do that from an aesthetic choice, from a creative standpoint, and they have the money to do that. But a lot of shows that might have before COVID wanted to switch, if they're budget challenged, will probably stay Super 35, and Super 35 gives you a tremendous look.
Agreed. My next question was on primes. Do you ever feel pressure as a company to produce a set of primes? And of course, Ingenue have just kind of gone down that route. I know you've just very eloquently showed us why we don't need primes, and your zooms cover the range, but I wondered whether, it's something you hear a lot.
Well, we're not saying you don't need primes. We're just saying that it's another choice to use if speed of your production needs to be increased, and the zooms are a good choice to make.
And really, these Fujinon zooms will complement those primes beautifully relative to their look. And not be a compromise. If on your crane shot or on your Russian arm, you want to intercut with your primes, these zooms. So certainly that complementary is not done at a hit from an optical performance perspective.
And then to answer your question as directly as I can, people ask us all the time for us to make primes. They love our zooms and they know that we would make fantastic primes. The market right now is pretty crowded. There's a lot of players, and we would want to come up with something that's creating something that's different, that's not offered in the market, and try to do something that is adding to it as opposed to just having another choice in the marketplace.
A new paintbrush.
Yeah.
So
Chuck, do you want to add anything to that? You've been vocal on this subject.
Well, I would add that all those high-end DPs that you mentioned there, and all of our big screen experiences, starting with Star Wars, with James Cameron, with Lucas, with all these people, they can afford to rent primes. That's not the issue. It's more an issue of speed and keeping characters, actors and characters and moving along. And if you're on a crane, it's become a workhorse on, it always has been for a lot of commercials and features. It's a big deal to change a prime. So if you can get that kind of a performance out of a zoom, aside from the faster speed, then zooms make sense. But they didn't used to be as good as primes. That's the difference now. Sure. And our to me, the gold standard of pristine, accurate optical performance in primes has been the master primes. I don't know if you'd agree with that or not, but in a lot of, I wouldn't call them shootouts, but comparisons with our premier lenses and now the Premistas, they hang with those master primes and the Leicas and the high end accurate primes. You can't tell the difference. In some cases, we've outshot them at the same T-stop. So we're not embarrassed by the performance of the zoom. It's a choice, and sometimes, master primes are big. It's not always size either, but it's more about, like Tom said, we've always made zooms. We've made primes. We made primes for Leica. We made our own primes for 2/3 inch, but it's not like we don't know how.
Yeah.
But how many zoom high-end zoom cinema companies are out there? You can count them on one hand. So
sure,
that's the difference.
And then just following on from that, then, do you think and obviously it's still unclear what these new guidelines are going to be, but social distancing and this kind of stuff, do you think we're going to see more of a trend of seeing zooms on set and replacing sets of primes because you simply have to go to the camera less, change the shot?
We hope so.
Name an industry where you're not, touching stuff where another guy's going to touch it, right? That would be a prime lens change. So I hadn't even thought about that, but yeah, zooms, if you can, and then there's other situations and really dusty situations. You want to be taking a lens off the camera, and there's just a ton of reasons, but it's a tool. You know, we, like Tom says, we are sharp, we are accurate, and we're not embarrassed by that. The trend is to be, you know, a lot of character lenses out there and so forth. My thinking, and who knows, but you know, with the software development and post-production capabilities, if you start with the cleanest image you can from a lens with extended data, you can make that image look anything you want. You want flare, put it in there. You want fall off in the corners, you want to match other lenses. I think that's all coming pretty quickly. And the trick to that is starting with the fullest bucket you can. And that's the Fujinon philosophy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, that's my opinion anyway.
Well, it makes sense too. I mean, lenses are a creative tool, as you mentioned. So there's a place for primes and there's a place for zooms, and it depends on the project. It depends on a lot of different parameters. And as you mentioned, as we come out of this COVID situation, there could be a higher demand for zooms because of limited amount of people on set for practical reasons that may not involve even the creative side, right? So kind of pairing those two together between the creative and the practical, you know, we could kind of see a lot more come of it. Yeah, Sean, did you have a question?
Yeah, yeah, I did. Just going back to the mount that we were chatted about earlier, your Aleph mount.
Mm-hmm.
Considering that we now have a family of Premistas, possibly a wide coming down the line, if it was our choice, and you were on set with you know, 2 or 3 primes, having to swap out that into the PL mount, that adapter would be quite something during a shoot or during the course of a production. Wouldn't it be something to consider to have a fixed LPL mount on those lenses going forward?
That is the idea, is that at the rental house level, you would apply the LPL adapter as Stosh described, but the ears would be taken off it, so that once it goes to set, that is, for all intents and purposes, an LPL lens. So if they've got 2 Premista lenses and a set of signature primes, every lens would be an LPL. So the camera operators and no one on the crew would need to worry about whether there's an adapter that needs to go on or not. That's the idea of removing the extra ears so that it looks as Kasai is holding in that picture.
Yeah, so it's all about locking that onto the lens so that it's not removable. So that's where that torque wrench comes in. It can be locked on, then that ring won't turn. And now for the duration of that show, it's an LPL mount. So in terms of engineering a solution where we're removing the PL mount and adding that on, is that possible? Sure, but it seems like it's over-engineered given this real clean, easy solution is available and achievable by everyone.
So you would need 2 of those mounts you'd need 1 for each lens respectively during a production.
Yeah. But as Stosh mentioned, rather than creating a new over-engineered extra product, you are able to just use the standard ARRI LPL adapter, which is, you know, we're trying to make it as cost-effective and practical as we can.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And that
you guys, I guess to that end, Sean, are you guys getting a lot of traction within the LPL space? Are you finding that a lot of requests are coming for LPL specific lenses at this time?
Well, we've got a fair amount of full frame primes going out at the moment, so you know, then it speaks for itself. It's the lenses are LPL mount, and then we have a combination one production where they're shooting between the 2 formats, so between PL and LPL. We see that happening quite often.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, with the LPL mount that you were mentioning, when you change it from PL to LPL, that doesn't change in a sense the image circle of the lens, correct? I would assume not, but just wanted to kind of state that It does not.
It also still passes the lens data that I can see Steve Robinson has said we must have data. So we agree with you, Steve. And you know, that was you know, very important to us. And the research, you know, not a lot of people have been using lens data, but everybody sees it coming. And I do think it's going to happen here in the next couple of years. And even, you know, I just think it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've actually had a couple people comment saying, you know, Steadicam, lighter weight, wide choice on one hand would find an audience for sure versus a longer lens. So, you know, definitely seems to be a lot of chatter on the, you know, the wider lightweight zoom option.
So the going through these choices, they'd also like a long lens is what somebody's saying.
Yeah, and Coda, I believe you have a question on that.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It was very thorough and very informative. And I'm sort of on the opposite side of the field. As a tech for Dynamic Atlanta, you know, I love seeing the big lenses. And we have a couple of Canons, and by Canon I mean it's about the size of a Canon in our saves, and we don't see too many big Fujinon zooms. And I understand the need to have these lenses be light and mobile, and that's what makes them very marketable. So what would Fujinon think about making a 10 times zoom or a 12 times zoom where, like, say 25 to 300 was the focal range, so a true 12 times zoom? But maybe what could make it more attractive is to cut down some of the weight and use a different alloy for the housing. And I think that would be best of both worlds, where it would be lightweight because you engineered it to be lighter with it, like maybe a magnesium housing. And it could be on a Steadicam because it's not adding 30 pounds to the operator's back.
I can pipe in here a little bit. The biggest limiting factor of any lens design, a consideration, is dictated by the size of the front element. If you want a lens that's faster, a bigger front element. You want more of a zoom range, bigger front element. So what does that mean? That means there's physics involved. The weight of the lenses is more glass than anything else. So yeah, you can use ultralight metals and it will reduce the weight, but not significantly if you play the physics game. And but you know, historically on our E series in the two-third inch world, and the Premiers in the Super 35, and now the Premistas, I mean, if they're going on a crane, these people don't really care about weight. They're going on dollies or whatever. It's not a handheld lens. So the trick is, how big do you make it before it becomes the size of maybe that Ingenue full frame zoom, which is pretty big. You know, but that's what it's about. Yeah, you'd like a T2 12 times zoom that, well, the front element's the size of a garbage can, you know, but you know, so it's all those it's not compromises, it's choices, and it's knowing where this lens is going to be used and what the range should be and what the speed has to be. But there's no magic wand on that, and every lens manufacturer is up against the same challenges.
So the same laws of physics.
Predicting where the market's going to be by the time that lens is actually born into the world.
Right, which takes at least a year and a half, you know, from design to over delivering it. And, you know, subsequent members of the family might come out in a year, you know, instead of a year and a half. But the initial, it takes a while, at least in our case. And so, yeah.
And that long zoom ratio, there are a lot of options available, I guess, Coda. And that's one of the challenges we're facing, and why we really truly enjoy these interactive discussions is to really get more opinions. You know, how is 162 mil front end too big? You know, does it have to be 156 or 136? You know, when does it get too big? Because we've had people say, oh, you know, it doesn't matter how big it is, but then in the next sentence, when talking about some of the other brands, oh, that one's too big. So we really do believe there is a threshold where there's going to be too big. So now where is that? And what t-stop do we need versus which focal range do we want? So if we want that 12:1, is it okay at T4? Most people would say no, they want to be much faster than that. So now we're down to a 10 or an 8:1 in terms of our zoom ratio. So again, those choices we have to make, and that's why we love these discussions, right? Because they're
making
the right compromises.
A little bit before my time, but when the 24-290 was introduced, you know, I'm told people freaked out by the size. They go, wow, that is one big lens. It's heavy. It's 24 pounds. And that's a big zoom, but largely influenced by Hollywood rental houses, you know, talked ingenue into making it. And guess what? Instantly people said, hey, that's a heck of a range. I can use that for a lot of things. So to us, the 24-290 ingenue has been a very successful, and it's kind of a benchmark of, you know, do you want to go bigger than that or do you want to go smaller than that? You know, when you're talking a big lens, that's kind of where you can start the discussion, maybe.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Chuck. We had a question come in on Facebook. I know we're at the hour, but I do want to ask. It came from Gerard Botha, and he asked, "Are there any anamorphic solutions? Are you guys thinking about any anamorphic lenses?"
We get asked about anamorphic all the time, and
almost as much as primes.
Almost as much as primes. Couple of things with anamorphic. Coming up with an anamorphic recipe that is what the market wants is a challenge. You can look at Vantage, who now has really good success with their primes. They've been at it for 30 years. So they've had some years where their lenses were not accepted by the high-end Hollywood community. When you look at some other anamorphic lenses that are too clean and crisp and perfect, and it's just a hard lens to build, and I don't think that that's a direction that we'll go down, but you never know. We're keeping our options open. We do hear a lot about it, and then also just building an anamorphic zoom. Is that something that people want to have, a large format anamorphic zoom? And then with our MKs, there is an inexpensive $1,500 anamorphic attachment that works pretty well. I mean, if you're looking for budget-minded, anamorphic using the SLR Magic, it's not a bad choice for $1,500.
Yeah.
But you know, the conversation about character lenses and anamorphics rages on, and the popularities of one over another, you know, as you've seen, I'm sure, go depending on who had the hit movie or whatever, and an artistic expression. So one DP might love Panavision anamorphics, but another might want to go with, you know, the Hawks, and another one, you know, I never use those, I would use these. Well, that further divides the market, right? There's already quite a few of anamorphic primes out there. And of those, some don't get used by some DP because that's not their look. And that's the same thing kind of with building a character lens, or, you know, with taste, because, oh, Fujinon came out with a new lens and it's funky here and here and here. And then some guys will go, oh, I like that. And others say, I hate that. And so probably the safest to date, and who knows, I mean, but you're building, you know, the lens that gives you the highest optical image you can, and with hopefully extended data, you know, start with the full bucket, because you can't go the other way. If you decide, wow, there's too much flare in this lens I use, well, that's too bad. But if you start with a pristine image, you can flare it up all you want. I mean, J.J. Abrams is really good at that, and so forth. Anyway, but that's us. We get kind of accused of being too ancient because we don't have our character lenses and we don't build funky lenses. But to date, we've just stayed the road that Fujinon has, which is always, you know, the full bucket type.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much. You know, we're at the end of our hour mark. Is there anything on the Fujinon side that you guys want to mention before we wrap up here?
Just want everybody to be safe, and we look forward to work returning and production starting back up for everybody. And I hope everybody's both safe physically as well as weathering this storm economically. It's a tough challenge for everybody. So I wish the best to everybody.
And certainly, perhaps just a note that the Fuji team, you know, Fujifilm's been very supportive of us in the optics division, and we're all here working from our various isolated home offices and available to support your needs as required. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and we're here for you. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we echo those same sentiments to the viewers and our clients and the DPs who are out there who are eager to get back to work. And, you know, we feel the same way. And we also feel, you know, lucky and appreciative to have you guys on this call and for us to learn something, to learn more about the Premista lenses and the history of Fujifilm and you know, what value you guys have brought to the entire industry. So we're very pleased in that regard, and we look forward to continuing our conversation and continuing to provide feedback where helpful to determine what next products come down that pipeline. So thank you everybody who joined, and thanks Fuji team for making this a great conversation.
Thank you for having us.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thank you. Cheers, guys.
Thanks.
Cheers.